everyone, and welcome to another episode of Your Career Success, the platform to inspire and empower career women globally. I'm your host, Suzi Mosley-Payne, and I've got an amazing guest for you today. I'm so excited for this interview and for the conversation. Danny Collins is a client partner, a senior recruitment agent for a company called Akkodis. Have I said that right, Danny?
That's right. Yeah, Akkodis.
Perfect. Akkodis. And today's interview is going to be all around how to have an amazing CV that gets you noticed in front of recruiters and helps you get shortlisted and through the door for an interview for the role that you're applying for. We're going to be covering so many amazing topics. There's so much value in the questions that I've got for Danny. Think of this as the opportunity to get inside the mind of a massively experienced recruitment consultant. So no pressure, Danny.
I love that intro.
But we've got some amazing questions to cover off. So thank you for joining me. I don't want to steal your thunder. Do you want to say a little bit about yourself and then we'll get straight into it?
Yeah, sure. No, thank you very much for the intro, Susan. Thanks for having me, I guess. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, as a bit of an introduction on me, I got into recruitment in 2009. So I've been doing this for a long time, 15 years now. I started as a junior consultant which was Modis back then, recruiting technical developers, software engineers for organisations sort of all over the UK. But probably over the last 10 years, I've spent most of my time in the change and transformation space. So recruiting anything from program managers, project managers, business analysts and PMO type skill sets, usually onto small and large sort of transformation initiatives. So yeah, that's largely what I do these days. And my network is very strong in sort of the Yorkshire area, but we do a lot in the Northwest and yeah, all sorts of different clients and customers. So yeah, we've got a very broad spread, but yeah, a bit of a veteran, I would say.
Amazing. Thank you. One of the things that I really want to know selfishly out of the back of this is, when you apply for a role through a platform like LinkedIn and you put your application in, it just kind of very often, unless you've got an existing relationship with the recruitment agent or the recruitment company, it just tends to disappear into a black hole. So one of the things that we said we were going to cover off is the layout of a CV, what to include on there and how for it to be really impactful in terms of your elevator pitch that gets you noticed. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the recruitment process. And if I was applying for a new role, and we know each other because you've placed me in roles previously, so thank you for that. So we've known each other quite a long time, haven't we? And you're always one of the first recruitment guys that I pick up the phone to when I've come available for a new client role. But for those who don't have a relationship with recruitment agents within companies like Akkodis, when they put their application through and they submit it through LinkedIn, what typically happens and how can we help people avoid it just disappearing? How can we help them get noticed when it lands on the recruiter's inbox?
Yeah, really good question, Suze. You're right in terms of whether you're applying for a role, I guess, through LinkedIn, whether it's direct to a hiring manager, whether it's to a talent acquisition person or even a CEO. Right now, companies are experiencing really high volumes of applicants. So we're talking sort of in the hundreds usually. I mean, we had a program manager role the other week for a customer in the Midlands with a pretty good salary, but we had 900 applicants. So that just gives you some context of how competitive it is right now. So I think the CV is really important for us to, I guess, catch our attention. So I think it's really important that first page particularly needs to do that, as well as the things that you've talked about, like your profile on LinkedIn and equally your network. But I think for me, the first page of the CV needs to be really eye-catching, and that so. There's some things that I would advise that I can go into a bit more detail on, but I think the layout is particularly important. But just it being easy to read, if I'm honest, we again see some really weird and wonderful things. And again, I'm purely speaking here, I guess in my world, whether it be program management, project management, analysis, and PMO, but usually I would opt for a layout that's your personal profile, an achievement section, and then going into your work history. But I think the most important thing for me is those achievements, and having some really sort of punchy, quantifiable statistics, percentages, and have that right under your profile, because that's one of the first things that I look at. And I think I read a stat that most recruiters have seconds or 6 seconds to kind of read on, and they'll make that determination after. And I know that's right for me anyway. So I think, like I say, that first page is incredibly important, but just to stand out amongst hundreds of other applicants. So I would say your CV is still incredibly important, and it's usually with all of my customers, the first thing that is kind of your passport to an interview, I guess. That's how I would look at it.
Yeah, amazing. So outcomes, having clear outcomes on there sounds like that's super important, and layout and readability. Do you think that those tips differ depending on what level of role you're applying for? So I'm just thinking, as my career has progressed over the last 20 years, my CV has definitely evolved. It's become more outcomes focused as I moved more into like portfolio director, program director, and other leadership roles. But do you think there's a difference, or does everything you've just said still apply, whether it's a really senior leadership role or an earlier in career type role?
I think it does. I think it would apply to any role that you're in, whether or not you're coming at it from even a graduate, or your first job. I still think those achievements can be quantifiable. I think that still, obviously, I guess the more your career progresses, there's going to be sort of more achievements, and certainly in the project space that I'm in, usually it would lend itself to people who are actually working on a project or a program of work where there's an actual delivery. So successful delivery, or what impact have you had on that? How did it contribute to ROI? Again, really sort of punchy achievements that you can quantify with statistics. I think make the numbers look big. I mean, I always love to see stuff like that in a CV. And again, it might be personal preference, but I just think whether or not you're a program manager or you're a graduate just starting out in your career, again, you could talk about your results, or your marks, or even personal achievements as well. If you haven't got any sort of employment history and you're just starting out, I think for anyone, no matter what part of your career you're at, I think you could always at least have an achievement section.
Brilliant. So my key takeaway from that is I've got 6 seconds of you reading that CV to make it count. So a really amazing elevator pitch, no waffle, and maybe making sure that the keywords that are relevant to the role that I was applying for are really punchy and are being pulled out, jumping out on the page. So I'd say one of the things that has definitely evolved in my CV over the recent years is any kind of fluff around, the nice to have words have just all got stripped back now, and it's very succinct, and I've focused much more on what are the keywords that you would, because I've done a lot of recruitment internally for clients as well when I've done interim roles, and I can remember CVs, piles of CVs, not as many as what you've just said. The market seems way more competitive now. But like when I was recruiting for quite a few roles around 5 years ago, I just got like CV burnout. It was the amount of CVs that were landing on my desk, and my ability to like pick out which I wanted to take to interview. It became quite difficult. It was almost like I just didn't want to read them anymore, because there was so many. Those that really did have a good elevator pitch did jump out at me. So thank you. I think that's amazing advice. What about the number of pages? Do you think, because I've kind of always worked with 2 pages maximum, but I have to be honest, I find it really tough cramming everything into 2 pages. What's kind of the optimum number? And if you saw a CV that was, say, 4 pages, would you be just straight put off that?
Yeah, I get asked this a lot, actually, Sue. So, and there's no right or wrong answer here, I don't think. I think if we're talking about me and sort of the type of people that I recruit for and the areas that I'm in and what my clients like to see, I would say between 2 and 4. But I'm not going to mark you down for it being 5 or probably 6. But 2 to 4, I would say, for me is a good number. I mean, we again, we'll receive CVs quite a lot where candidates have actually, put their text down to like level, size 6, just to cram it all in because someone's told them that 2 pages maximum. And again, that in terms of what I'm talking about it looking, aesthetically pleasing, that first page really standing out, being really punchy, just sort of, minimizing your text to size 6 to squash it all in. It just doesn't read well. So my advice to those people would be, just go with a, size 10, 12, over 3 or 4 pages, and you find that. And I think, even if you've done, 20, 30 years in project program management, business analysis, whatever it might be, what I would say is keep your most relevant experience, at the top, obviously at the top of your work history, and the less relevant, the stuff you did maybe 30, years ago. Again, I sometimes encourage, people to sort of put a sentence at the bottom there, like, more information can be provided at client request, something along those lines, unless you think it's really relevant for the job that you're applying for, in which, include it maybe in your achievement section. But yeah, I mean, and coming on to your other point about keywords, I mean, we've known some stories over the years in our role, but I think there was something a few years ago where, again, candidates were putting keywords on their CV in white font, and the reason for it is no one would see it. But in an ATS or a candidate tracking system, I think that the thought was that the algorithm might pick it up and it would put you ahead of the queue. But again, those sort of tricks really, they just don't work, because again, at the end of the day, you're going to have to be qualified for that role. So I think what I would say to people is, your skill set is particularly important for the CV, but I would make sure it's the skill set that is relevant for the role. We see a lot of CVs and profiles that have just got everything on there from a skill set point of view that might apply to like 5 different job families. And I think, again, it can be a bit of a turn off. I mean, again, but I would just make sure the CV is catered to the role that you're applying for, that job family. If you're a project manager, it's things like, as planning, stakeholder management, third-party engagement. It might be RFI or RFP type work that you've done. So the skills that are relevant for the role, I would say, is equally as important as well.
Amazing. I think that's all really, really good advice. Do you think your CV should differ whether you're applying for a perm role or an interim or contract role? Or do you think would you see a difference, or would you expect a difference?
If I'm honest, I'd probably say No, I wouldn't expect a difference as much now. I mean, when I've done obviously a lot of interim recruitment, probably more interim recruitment than I have done permanent recruitment. So that's, tends to be my world. But I remember, years and years ago, there was like a key difference that I would normally see, and a permanent CV, again, would sometimes be more narrative and tell more of a story, whereas a contractor CV would be, more bullet point, punchy, But if I'm honest, I think that the advice would apply to both permanent and interim, in that, and I guess my best advice would be, just make sure it reads well. So one has the right layout, is structured in the right way, is punchy, includes stats, it's quantifiable, maybe URLs of either projects or organizations that you've worked in. And if it's over, like I say, 2, 3, 4 pages, then, I think you can't go far wrong, really. Awesome. So I think, I wouldn't give different advice to, someone who'd be looking for permanent work over interim these days, if I'm honest. I think ultimately it just needs to be punchy and stand out. Like I say, grab that hiring manager's attention, that recruiter's attention, that, talent acquisition person in that first page.
I have to say, all these tips that you're giving are like selfishly, they're massively helpful to me. So I know that they'll help any career woman listening to this, because it's a rare opportunity, isn't it, getting inside the mind of like a recruitment agent. So I want to thank you again for taking part in this. It's I massively appreciate it. But hopefully, if anyone has watched this and then applies for a role, it might make the recruitment consultant's job a little bit easier if the CV is, the best it can be as well.
Hopefully, yeah. So I was going to say, sometimes, I mean, this always happens as well with the CV. It'll be that really niche role that you're trying to find. I had a role that was SC cleared, PLM architect for a defense organization, and it'll be that CV that you see, and there's not very many of them that don't have the contact details on, and then my role is almost a bit of detective work to try and locate that individual. So I've had a few of those in my time as well.
Crikey. We ought to do like a career recruitment stories episode.
A little follow-up.
A little follow-up. There was 2 other things that I wanted to ask you about. One was around like the power of personal brand, particularly on LinkedIn, because that seems to be the main platform now globally, certainly in the States and in the UK, which is where I imagine a lot of the ladies watching this will be from. So power of network and power of personal brand and presence on LinkedIn. So let's touch on that in a minute. And then the other thing that I wanted to ask you is, and I guess we could cover this one first because it's a quicker one. Like, for someone applying for a role on LinkedIn, when they submit their CV, what would you recommend, and what do you prefer as a recruitment consultant? Do you like them to reach out to you and kind of get in contact, talk to you? Because back in the day, if I think about when I first started consulting a long time ago, when I was like 26, it was a thing. You would always apply for a role, and you would, if you wanted to get noticed, you pick up the phone and you make a real effort to get your name in front and get a conversation with your recruitment agent who's trying to fill the role. So it was like a bit of a process that I used to go through. I wouldn't apply for roles that weren't a good fit for me and cast my net out there. I would always be quite selective on what I applied for. And the ones that I thought were a really good fit for me, I would always make the effort to pick up the phone and speak to the recruitment agent, rather than just kind of leaving it to chance and throwing it out there. Is that still the process that you would recommend, or do you think things are different now?
It's definitely something I would recommend in terms of, if you've it's funny, I was having a conversation with my mum about this the other day, but again, in that piece around standing out that we've already talked about. If we've got hundreds of applications for the same role, who's going to stand out? Is it that candidate who's just, you know, a CV amongst hundreds, or is it that person who has, you know, reached out to us maybe via a different platform on LinkedIn? You know, it might be a message, you know, they might have our number already. But yeah, I just think, you know, just to quantify it, like if we've got 300 applicants, the 10 that have sent me a LinkedIn message or have tried to get hold of me or emailed me, they're the ones that do actually stand out. Don't get me wrong, you know, I still probably would take a look at, you know, the others that haven't, again, if you have time. But I think it's some really good advice, actually, Suzi. I would definitely say, yeah, like I say, just stand out, and yeah, so get hold of that recruiter, whether it be, you know, calling them, emailing them, sending them a LinkedIn message. You know, usually if you're advertising a role, or if I'm advertising a role, my name will be on the advert, or it will be on the LinkedIn advert as well. So yeah, my name's there. You know, I'm out there on LinkedIn. Someone, you know, everyone can get my profile. It's open to everyone, and yeah, as is probably, you know, with Google these days, your contact details and probably even where I live. But I wouldn't advise popping around to my house. But
that's it. I'll be knocking on your door next time. Next time I'm looking for
what are you doing here? But yeah, no, I think nothing has really changed there. Not in my world. And I know you said you were going to come on to personal branding. I think that is getting even more important, you know, these days. But yeah, I can come on to that. But yeah, no, I'd say nothing's changed, and yeah, do all of those things just to stand out, particularly in a competitive market like it is now.
Awesome. I think that's great advice. So the key takeaway there then is you've really got to, if you want that role and you want to be noticed, you've got to make the effort and get known to that recruiter, because otherwise, even if you're the best candidate on the planet for that role and you're adamant you're the perfect fit for it, the chance of your CV being seen, you've got to kind of raise the ratio and get the chances increased for yourself then. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, perfect. That's really helpful. Let me ask you one more question on this then, and then we'll go on to personal brands. So again, back in the day, I'm really showing my age with this. I'm not liking this. I'm like, I need to pretend I'm like 21 or still in my 20s. But anyway, cover letters. So it always used to be a thing that when you applied for a role, you were expected to put a cover letter in. Is it still a thing? Personally, I hate cover letters. I find those harder to do than the actual CV themselves. And I guess when you're applying for multiple roles, doing a tailored cover letter, I mean, it's a lot of effort. You know, if you want the role, you've got to make the effort. But as a recruiter, do you care about cover letters anymore?
The short answer is probably no, not as much as probably as we used to. If I'm honest, I've never really been a fan of cover letters, and never really used them, or my clients have never really asked for them. It would be your main point. So I think it's good to draw out, you know, why you might be a good fit for the role. Again, if it really stands out, but your CV should be your ticket to you know, to making that or highlight that. So I'd say, yeah, they're not as probably important as they used to be, but they never really used to be that important for me anyway. But I would just give the advice of what I've already given, really, in terms of trying to engage with the recruiter directly on the phone. You know, LinkedIn. You know, see as well. I think LinkedIn is really powerful with the mutual connections. It's something I'll always talk to our candidates about if they're interview, or, you know, if they're interview, or even if the organisation that I'm hiring for have got mutual connections with the people that I'm talking to, particularly the hiring manager, because he may know if they're if they've done a good job previously, or if they've worked together before, or whatever it might be. So I'd say there's other things that you can be doing really to make yourself stand out. And like I said to you before, if we've got hundreds of responses, coming in for a role, if you've messaged me directly, tried to get me on LinkedIn, on the phone, you're sort of standing out to me, and it's probably making me want to pick up the phone and have a chat. But yeah, I've the only time I've really asked, I've not necessarily asked for a cover letter as such, but sometimes I will ask candidates if I feel they're right for a role to just in bullet point form really sort of tell me why they think they're a fit after a good conversation. So, but yeah, I don't think they're particularly important, not in my world anyway.
That's quite good, actually. You know what you've just said about the bullet points. So one good tip I would say is when you're reaching out to a recruitment agent, actually having those bullet points as a bit of a talk track and a prompt you're not trying to wing it when you're on the phone to them. Like if I was going to ring you, I would find it super helpful reminder if I'd already made that list of bullet points in advance, and then I can make sure that I'm not missing anything and I'm really selling myself with that elevator pitch in that first conversation. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, I think the point around cover letters has just made like every contractor's day, because I used to hate having to do them. It was like my biggest, and even now, in like recent years when I've applied for some of the massive consultancy companies still ask for cover letters, and I tell you what, the hoops that they make you jump through to actually even put an application through that is going to disappear down a black hole. Unless I really want the role, it turns me right off. I won't even bother. I've not applied for roles that have sounded amazing because of the process that they're making me jump through to actually apply in the first place. And also, if I can't see the salary or the day rate for that role, I'm even less inclined to go through the motions and the effort with it. But I guess that's where I've got to. But I think from every consultant and contractor's perspective, I'll eat my words if anybody says different, but I don't think anybody enjoys the concept of a cover letter. So the fact that let's say they're now 1990s and out the door, I'm like open and blue about
that. Pretty much. And I think you're right in terms of, again, talking to family about this at the weekend, but you're right, these application processes, that are online, again, they take so much time. So I think that's one thing to just kind of bear in mind really is if you are also looking to like change your CV, depending on, if you've got a real broad range of skills and you feel, you could apply for a BA and a project manager, let's say, I think it's just really important just to be mindful that, to have the right CV for the right role with the right skills and an application of your achievements, but also just be mindful that if you're going, I think it does lend itself, like you say, to consultancy, public sector sometimes, central government, but these long application processes obviously will be fairly time consuming. So just kind of bear that in mind and make sure, I guess, you're using the right profile for the right role. We've had a few funny stories with that before as well. With just, I don't know, there's an example, a chef applying for a Microsoft Dynamics architect role and things like that. So just be mindful of I guess your skill set and what role is right for you really, and where to concentrate your efforts.
That's a really good tip. I think, there is, particularly if you're applying for many roles, there is a bit of the natural, like the least resistance path would be using the same CV for every role. But I think, like you say, you're not doing yourself justice then. If you really want to I have that challenge myself. When I used to apply for contracts and I was applying for program director, program manager, portfolio, business change, it was like I could list off about 5 or 6 different roles that I could be put forward for. And the easiest thing for me would be have one CV for all, but it just wouldn't have showcased my capability in each of those areas. So I think that's really good advice. Thank you, Danny. All right, let's talk about personal brand and LinkedIn and the power of networking. So they're probably topics all in their own right, but I think a good place to start is LinkedIn is a great platform. Even if you're not on there posting all the time, having a really good structured profile on there with a professional headshot, it builds like, know, and trust instantly for somebody looking on there who is doing some research on you.
Yeah.
What would you, if you were to say, if I submitted my CV and it landed on your desk then, what would you look for on my LinkedIn profile? If you had no clue who I was, what would be the key things that you would go on there and would instantly look for to give you kind of that decision making of, do I rule them out or are they a good fit?
Yeah, no, really, really good question. I think so. Yeah, to answer it most simply, but just that your profile is a full profile would be my first point. Just, you know, you've filled in absolutely everything that you need to make your profile a full profile. So, you know, your profile going into your work history. Again, this would be hand in hand really with your CV, if I'm completely honest. So, you know, if you've done a CV, it can translate quite easily to your LinkedIn profile. But for anyone that is looking for a role sort of in the space that I recruit for, it might be, sort of all of those things, but then, you know, contact details. I'd be also looking at, and this is again why LinkedIn's so powerful, but your mutual connections. So often I am with, you know, candidates' permission, I will say, you know, well, I noticed that we've got a mutual connection in this person. Did you work with them? And again, it can be a reference point for us, particularly as you build out your network, you know, and it gets bigger and bigger. So, yeah, LinkedIn is an incredibly powerful platform for that. But also, I'll probably say recommendations as well. You know, I know recommendations can be, I don't know, depending on who is recommending you, maybe a talking point for a lot of people. But I think if you've got some really solid, you know, ask for recommendations of, you know, people you've worked for or who you've reported into. I think again they really stand out on your profile. And again, if I'm looking at this person's CV and there's some reference data there and it marries up to the LinkedIn profile, you know, I guess, you know, the main thing as well that they are who they say they are as well. But yeah, I just making sure it's a full profile. I think that's my main point really, with all of the CV information that you've got you know, on there. I think another point as well. Just, I know you're talking about, you know, sending your CV to me, but I think the power of LinkedIn now is just so powerful, because a lot of recruiters in what I do, or a lot of my competitors and us as an organization, we use LinkedIn Recruiter. So again, if we're going to be doing a search around a particular role, let's say a program manager in Leeds for a law firm, you know, there's so much functionality with LinkedIn Recruiter. You know, you can narrow down, you know, where people have worked, you know, again, keyword search around the skill set, you know, how long people have been at certain organizations. It narrows down to absolute minor details now. So usually, you know, people in my role would be building out a sort of a project of people via LinkedIn. So I think again, it's just why it's such a powerful platform. And I'd say, yeah, anyone, I guess, looking to find a new role, make sure you've got a really solid LinkedIn profile. But could probably go on about that for a long time, if I'm honest. And
Me too.
it might be another episode.
I think so. I think I do think that there are a few bits that need to be broken down in detail. So like the power of your network is a topic in itself.
Yeah.
The power of your personal brand and how to structure your profile. I might do a masterclass on that. The other thing that I thought I'd do an episode on, one of my friends owns a photography business, and she does a lot of female entrepreneur and career women branding shots. She's done quite a few for me over the years, and I've used them. It's what I use on LinkedIn. I use them for corporate clients, my entrepreneurial website, all sorts. And I'm going to try and get her on the show to talk around, if you can't afford someone to come in and do a branding shot for you, how you can take a professional branding shot that you can use on such as LinkedIn. Because some of the photos on there, I mean, that is it's like your shop window, isn't it? Your LinkedIn is your shop window. Yeah. And if you've got a selfie where you're like doing that, or, whatever, it's not really, unless you're applying for like a really informal role, you've got to have a headshot that does you justice. So I'll cover that. I'll see if I can get her on one of the episodes, and I'll get her to give some tips around how to do a really great headshot for yourself on your phone if you haven't got the look of having a photographer friend. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think as well, in terms of I forget what it's called now, but the bit right underneath your photo, again, I think that's really important. I think it's your headline. So and again, just make sure that's really punchy around, again, what you do. Again, you can quantify it. I know people in our industry will put, I don't know how big their network is, or it might be how many connections they have, or it might be, how many people that they've placed in a certain area. But if you really narrow that down to a niche, again, people looking for you will actually, know what you're about. And that can apply to anything, whether it be, business analysis, project management, program management. You could say if it's sort of certain industries that you work in, or whatever it might be. But I think, again, headline, it is pretty important. But like I say, we could do an hour, 2 hour long workshop, I think, on a number of the LinkedIn takeaways. It's huge right now, and as is like you say, personal branding.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's really, really important. I mean, in one of my other businesses, I used to do a lot of LinkedIn and marketing and how to have a really strong digital presence. And I was quite surprised that there are a lot of people don't know how to use LinkedIn, and a lot of career women, because they don't, particularly if you're not looking for a role, it's not a platform you'd use all the time. So they don't think that they need a presence on there. But everything you've said, I agree with. You do need a presence, because particularly in today's digital age, people are going to find a way to find out more about you. So you want to control the narrative on that. So, if they Google you and your LinkedIn comes up, you do want to make sure that whatever's out there is what you want to portray, and it builds that instant like, know, and trust. And like I said, it's your shop window, isn't it? In terms of, you want a good display on there in terms of your expertise and experience. Amazing.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, I think we've covered a heck of a lot in this episode. I mean, I could talk about it all day. I think there's so much value in everything that you've said, the tips that you've given. We might need to do a follow on at some point if you're willing, because there's so much more we could delve into. But thank you so much. It's been an incredible interview. I've loved speaking with you. I've got so much value from this, so I know that the audience will. And I can't wait to air the episode and share all this with everyone. It's going to be incredible.
No, well, thank you. Well, thanks to you as well, Suzi, for having me on. But like I say, I could go on for forever, to be honest, about this subject. And if anyone does, want to, I guess, talk to me about it in a bit more depth, I don't know. Well, I'll probably caveat that without getting sort of bombarded if I can get back to you. But like I say, I could talk about it and give, I guess, more in depth CV advice. But I think, I know we've covered a few of the main points.
Awesome. Well, we'll include some links, whatever links you want to share. So if anyone wants to get in touch with Danny, I'll include the links in the show notes. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, Danny. It's been a pleasure and really great, all the value that you've shared. So thank you so much. And thank you to Akkodis as well for agreeing for this interview to go ahead. So awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Danny Collins. I'm sure you'll agree with me that Danny gave so many great tips, some fantastic actionable steps that you can take and redo your own career to make it a great reflection of your skills and capabilities. It was also really great to get behind the scenes of what happens in the actual recruitment process, how you're shortlisted for the roles that you apply for, and also to get inside the mind and the way of thinking of such an amazingly experienced recruitment agent was so powerful. So I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. There's definitely going to be more like that to come, future interviews. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Come and join us in the free communities over on Facebook or LinkedIn. We'd love to see you in there, and we'll let you know of all the upcoming masterclasses, guest interviews, coffee chats with career women, and so much more. So don't forget to subscribe and come and join us, because there's so much value still to come. Have a great week, everyone, and thank you for watching.